I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. The duo is not in the same city right now. I know that's tough. Like, we're so used to being connected. New York, the center of the sports world. But I'm going continental, Andrew. I'm over here eating continental breakfasts.
It sounds like you're underwater, and it looks like, or eventually when we post this onto our YouTube channel, which we will launch soon, it looks like I'm underwater. So it's like hear no evil, see no evil, part 2.
Yeah, we'll see how this plays out. I mean, look, they haven't really caught up to the technology necessary to make Cookies Oops podcasts weekly. So we'll see. We'll see. But yes, I am currently in Paris. I was in London, went to Sukeban, friends of the pod, the Japanese women's wrestling event that I think that was number 4. So that was a good time out there. There was
New
New York,
York,
Miami.
Japan, Miami. Right.
Yeah, New York, Miami, LA, and then now London. So
How is Sukeban doing?
um, event was fun. They've really gotten it down to a polished operation. The wrestling continues to be great. And the venue, I think, was called York Hall, which is a traditional boxing, MMA, brawling venue, super old. And the lines were extremely long to get in. Like, I mean, comically down the block because they were searching people for
Hmm.
weapons and drugs, which was really funny because it was just a bunch of like British cool kids getting into a Japanese wrestling event.
Sounds like the Hacienda door policy is more influential than the music.
It was all very influential. But yeah, good time. Now I'm in Paris. And Andrew, have you ever stayed in an Airbnb?
Yeah, of course.
I don't know. You travel, but I feel like you normally stay in hotels, and I'm getting the real Airbnb experience this time around.
What do you mean?
Recently, I've been staying in hotels when I can, but I sort of made this a last second jaunt, and I was like, all right, let me find an Airbnb. The hotels are booked or super expensive. Found a decent Airbnb, nice place, and it has the customary Airbnb style decor. For example, there are a bunch of framed Chanel logos on the walls.
Hmm.
Don't know why, but that's what they have. They
It
also
was
have
in the
these things.
classic old-timey magazines with controversial artwork of certain racial profiling framed.
There's those. There's also the Marilyn Monroe. Um, you're the pointillism or pop art portraits. Those are
Hmm.
really big in the Airbnb community.
Was there a salvage piece of wood that said like "Home Sweet Home" or like "Good Cooking"?
No, they don't have that, but they do have these fake books that you can see that are just cardboard. They're empty. They look like books, but they say
Tell
like
tell
Hermes.
our
They
listeners
say
what you're holding up.
Hermes. Yeah, they're these fake books that have Hermes on the back and the front, or Dior,
And they're
Yves Saint
hollowed out. There's
Laurent.
no pages. Is there
There's no
weed in them?
pages. No, there's you can't even open them. They're just here. There's another one propping up the computer as we speak. So those are the kind of um, decorations that I'm enjoying. There aren't any ones that are racially offensive, such as we saw in Cleveland, though.
Sounds like Airbnb has evolved from an offensive hotel or hotel-esque stay to a joyful one where there's like hollowed out Joy basketball books just stacked up in the corner.
Um, but the trajectory of Airbnb, this is not new. This has been the case for a while, going from this quasi bohemian idea of, yeah, like I've got a spare room. I think a traveler, a young traveler who can't afford a hotel would like to stay in my spare bedroom, and I could make a couple coins for that. To it being just lousy hotel rooms.
Yeah, it's. I guess at first I want to blame it on standard issue capitalism, but it's just human nature, right? Like, when given a market deficiency, people will identify it and exploit it, sort of like in basketball in the NBA. So when Airbnb first started, it was kind of an idea that was idyllic, utopian, whatever. It's a good idea, in my opinion, because to be honest, fuck hotels, right? Like, do we really want to ride for Donald Trump? Like, no, we want to take the power into our own hands and create this market where we're serving ourselves kind of in a communal way. And then it didn't take long for people to be like, oh, I can make money here, here, and here, and I should just do it. And now we have a product that no one is really thrilled with, but people still use, like yourself.
Yeah, I try to avoid it, and I believe that it does have very strong moral issues in a way that can ruin neighborhoods. I do think that's real, and I've seen that in Williamsburg when you go down the block and there'd be hundreds of the little lockbox things or key
But now they're
boxes,
gone,
whatever.
right? Has it
Some
saved
rules have
Williamsburg?
changed.
Yeah,
Yeah, Williamsburg is amazing now. Um,
right.
but yeah, a place like Portugal, they're like, yeah, our rents went crazy. It's just the Airbnb
Yeah.
stuff. But it's sort of what you said. It was like kind of an offshoot of the couch surfing community that people looked at and said, well, so I can just be a hotelier with no license as long as I take out 4 leases on apartments. I can just make Balaz money. Why would I
Listen,
not do
I'm just
that?
going to be in the corner. And since I live here, I get to choose what's on the TV. But have a nice day.
That's all it is. But the this particular one, spacious. It's kind of sort of like a reverse panopticon.
Go on.
There's no curtains
Mm.
on either side. There's a bedroom and a kitchen living room area. There's no curtains anywhere, and there's windows along both sides. So the light is fine, but there's a office buildings on either side. And if I look out the window, I will see 20 people at their desks typing away from my bed
Hmm.
or from the living room. And it makes you pretty self-conscious, even beyond like the whole lack of privacy. It's like all these people working are seeing me just lying on my bed on my phone. Like I'm being exposed out here.
There's this whole debate about how to turn office space into livable space and how to make cities affordable. When you realize you're in between, in a maybe pop-up apartment in between offices, in a room that probably was an office a few months ago, years ago, did you think you got taken for a ride, or were you like, I get what I pay for?
I don't think that is the case, even though I know what you're talking about, those kind of places that they're just throwing walls up
Hmm.
and saying, yeah,
You
this
put a
is a
stove
real,
in. Yeah.
this may have been industrial at one point, but looking around, I think this has been an apartment for a long time. It's just
Hmm.
neighbors happen to be straight up cubicles, and
Hmm.
I can really see people at every single one of them, and I'm gonna guess that they could see me.
Yeah, I mean, sheesh. There's a whole genre of Airbnb terror horror movies on Netflix and streaming. I think I forgot his name, but he directed like the surveillance terror, rated R for surveillance, where like the Airbnb couple stay in a beautiful place and they realize there's a camera in the shower head, and then the guy kind of mysteriously shows up and misses stuff around, and then it just goes full slasher and like he starts killing off the people there. And it's less a commentary on Airbnb as it is on capitalism, right? It's just like, oh, you thought you had like a thing that mm, was conducive to a better way of living, but really all it is people making profits off of you.
Yeah, I mean, and the last point about the panopticon reversal, which is kind of like a reverse mogging of some
Mm,
sorts, I guess, is that because they're offices, it's a different vibe. Like I'm not particularly bashful. Like I'll walk around in my apartment in my underwear, and if neighbors from
Nick's
across the
shorts,
street,
your Nick's
Nick's
regalia,
huge Knicks shorts,
cookies,
size
mob
7XL.
teas. Yeah.
Yeah, I wear that around all the time. No big deal. Mogging
Mm,
on my neighbors. But
mhm.
it's weirder when it's people at work.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just stranger. If you'd asked me if it was the same, I would have said yes. It's
Hmm.
not. Walking around in your underwear and there's just people at their desks clicking away and can just 50 of them are seeing you. It's weird. Anyway, I'm gonna keep mogging. Um,
So you've talked about Airbnbs, which are kind of universally strange everywhere. Tell me, what's the vibe in Paris and London, man? I've not been in years. Like first London, you were there for Frieze Week. Sukeban kind of coincided with the art world getting together in London. What was that like?
so my rudimentary understanding of Freeze Week is based on New York because that's the only time I've experienced it until now. What people told me, and this is not even an opinion that I would be able to share otherwise, this is just me regurgitating the wisdom of others, is that Freeze was pretty slow and that it's sort of losing momentum. And in part of that is because now Basel has moved to Paris this week. So it's challenging for people to commit to 2 weeks straight of being in hotels, being in Europe, even if they're connected by a tunnel. So the energy has shifted towards the Basel week, and I think that's reflected in people we know, you know, the Nate Freemans and et cetera, who are actually you might have been in both, but
He was at both.
yeah, but a lot of people are just coming out for Paris this time.
Well, you have your allegiances towards like if a fair lets you in and you do business with the fair and you're a gallery, you kind of stick with the fair. So if something happens against Freeze, you're kind of beholden to a quid pro quo, as they say, And if you don't participate, they might not let you in next year. It's a really fluid thing. There's just too many fairs. It's all about interest rates. I don't think it's about necessarily the volume of opportunity. I think if there was money to be made, people would do everything.
You'll be happy to know that I've been pushing your Ozempic theory any
That's
chance
my
I get.
don't. Well, should we get into this? Because I kind of want to get into this.
I know you do because you just tweeted about it again like yesterday or something like that. And I've been always attributing it to you. I never sit there and say,
Right.
hey, I've got an art world theory. No,
Hey,
I'm
I
like,
I
I'm
called
like,
I called Josh
here you
Minot,
go.
man. I own Josh Minot's intellectual property. I thought he was
Look,
going to be the best
I
until he
know
plays poorly. Then he's not mine.
I've known of Ryan Dunn for several months. I claim him for life.
Hey, I thought the Knicks should have taken Ryan Dunn. Jovic is mine forever, but
He is yours forever.
my idea forever. But yeah, so there has been like the slowdown you're talking about has been happening in every industry, right? Like the sports media industry, the the art art market has crashed a bit. Sotheby's is recording record losses. LOL. People are struggling, right? And it's interest rates, it's fumes from COVID and the injection of cold hard cash onto the world's population would have this effect of like the water receding before a tsunami. Um, but I was feeling this malaise too that you're talking about discussing with other people in the art market. And I was like, I miss feelings, right? So I go on YouTube. I'm like, I want to hear art critics talk about art in 2024 right now, shows that are up right now. And I found this guy who's pretty great and knowledgeable. And he goes through Chelsea and Tribeca and edits kind of like a thesis as he goes through these shows. And he's just like, the problem with art these days and the art market these days, quote unquote, is its detachment from modernism, its misunderstanding of art history, misunderstanding of what Ad Reinhardt has told us explicitly about the last painting that will ever be made. Sort of like Wemby, in my opinion, is the last basketball player ever, which is a complicated idea because there'll be more players after him, but he's the final form. And it got me thinking that the conversation was unfair because it puts the onus on the artist. I've heard critics like this forever. I've heard people talking about LeBron James forever in the same way they used to talk about Michael Jordan. And I thought, like, if we're going to have a fun time at this, critics have to evolve with art, and critics have to evolve with basketball. And if you don't, we talk about Jordan originalism all the time. If you don't, you're just being like, new stuff sucks, which I think is totally fair, but not interesting. Someone dropped the Ozempic tape that isn't me. It is all about Ozempic. I want some smart art history guy to be like, modernism is a nebulous idea at this point, but everyone's gotten skinny and stopped supporting art.
Well, maybe they're just not doing enough cocaine.
Sheesh. Okay. Now you're in Paris. I don't want you to narc on anyone. You don't have to be the rat czar. Is cocaine still a thing?
I mean, I feel like cocaine has maintained a constant throughout
Mm-hmm.
the time I've been in New York. It dipped off during the pandemic because it was really hard to get, and ketamine had its moment, which
That's
is
what I
still
mean.
around, still around. But yeah, cocaine still seems to be moving along. I don't know the Ozempic cocaine dip. There
Mhm.
probably is one.
Yeah.
You'd assume that there were some
Yeah.
like big time, Coke fans.
Obesity is
Just
officially curable, and people are curing it.
so
Therefore, yeah,
if you want to get rid of your drug addiction and your cigarette addiction and you want to lose weight,
or
the
gambling
miracle pill
addiction.
is here.
Yeah.
You just might lose your lust for buying art.
You will lose your lust for buying art and arguing about Jason Tatum, but thankfully we're still on that cocaine. But I attribute the 90s rap scene to cocaine, right? Like, it was a fast-paced kind of boom bap. We don't have to relitigate this again, but the sound of DJ Premier to me was rooted in crack and cocaine. And then when that kind of subsided to weed, we got a whole different thing, right? And then when
Hmm.
weed evolved into this psychedelic substance, then we even got more. We got ghetto gothic, we got ASAP Yams, like all these experimental sounds, Animal Collective, whatever. So I think cocaine, while it is a constant and weed is a constant, it goes in and out of its advancement.
Yeah, interesting thinking about what drugs are connected to what forms of music. Because you could look at like Jefferson Airplane, like, well, that's just LSD.
Yeah,
That's
for
that's
sure.
what they're doing here. And rap, it's like
Jefferson Airplane. Oh my god.
I'm
Yo,
just saying,
for 100, you
you know,
got it. Yeah, yeah.
Grateful Dead, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
hallucinogenics, all of those and above,
Mm-hmm.
mushrooms,
Mm-hmm.
weed, whatever, and like,
Techno. Yeah.
yeah, disco.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's
That's cocaine.
cocaine. Yeah,
That's for sure cocaine.
but yeah, as you know, rap moved along. I remember when your man Dell, the funky Homo sapien from Hieroglyphics crew, he was talking about using mushrooms. I'm like, that's new.
Mm-hmm.
This is
Did a
fucking
collab with
90s.
Dinosaur Jr. Yeah.
The 90s. Like, East Coast rappers were not talking about doing mushrooms. That was like the West Coast twist. East
Dell.
Coast
Yeah.
rappers were talking about smoking dust, like Beastie
Yeah.
Boys or Ghostface. Like dust, angel dust is like,
Yeah.
to me, that's like New York City rap.
36 Chambers,
Mm,
right?
sorry to interrupt. Or Houston rap, or also maybe Bay Area rap. Sherm
It
Stick was definitely like regional.
and right, and then people talk about the colors Van Gogh saw when he was on his psychedelics, and being like, how did he come up with this style? How did he come up with these color combinations that we've never seen before? They were so vibrant and unnatural, based off of nature. And now people are like, oh, it was the drugs he was on at the time, absence, whatever, like the primitive psychedelics they had before the zooted stuff now. But I when something happens in basketball, TV, music, art, my first instinct is like, what drugs are available, and what kind of weird is cool right now? Because it's not very cool to be drunk right now, but it's kind of cool to be stoned and high on psychedelics, right?
Well, right,
And skinny.
that's California sober, which is
Mm-hmm.
you just smoke weed. There's New York sober, which is you just drink, do cocaine and ketamine. Like
I
that's
was at
it.
a, yeah.
Nothing else.
I was at a dinner party on Sunday, with someone who's like training to be an ayahuasca shaman, whatever. You
Were you zooted?
Well, I'm getting to that. They were ex sommelier. I'm very skinny now. But on Saturday it was a birthday for our good buddy John Caramonica, his yearly party that which I enjoy quite a bit. A lot of ex cookies royalty in attendance, and I had 3 drinks, right? Like, and I
Lightly zooted.
yeah, lightly so, and drink to other people, but I had
You were New York sober.
yeah, and I felt terrible because it's poison, right? And I'm old as fuck. And at the dinner party on Sunday, someone offered me a glass of wine. I'm like, no thanks. Like, I've had my drinks for the week. Like, I feel fine, but I'm not totally like myself. I want to get back on track for Monday. And the
Oh yeah, you got a
ayahuasca,
you got a pod to drop. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I need to be lucid, right? I need to be very skinny for it. And the ayahuasca guy was like, why does anyone drink? Just take some weed, you'll giggle for 20 minutes and pass out and get a great night's sleep. Not true all the time for both, right? Passing out while intoxicated on anything is not great sleep, and not everybody giggles as their thing. But I was like, there's a fundamental misunderstanding of why I drink. I don't drink to like get high. I drink so I can argue about Ryan Dunn.
You drink to have something to do with your hands.
Or just
Ugh,
like,
what
what
are you
am
gonna
I
do
going to do?
otherwise?
Stand in my favorite parking lot on Canal Street and not have something cold to drink while everyone else is enjoying? How am I going to pass 2 hours?
But the ayahuasca merchant's opinion is weird though, because like, wow, why would anyone drink? Well, buddy, I would say a healthy amount of people have tried both of these things and concluded which one they like better. It's not like, oh shit, I never thought of that. You mean I could smoke weed instead of drinking? What is this marijuana, this devil's weed that you speak of?
The men at this party, pushing 40 or 50, looked at each other being like, well, we know about weed. Woo, we know about weed. You don't have to tell us about weed. We know all about weed. I don't.
So
I've never smoked it.
marijuana, you say?
Yeah. I
Interesting.
mean,
A
but
jazz cigarette.
yeah. Are they eating weed in Paris?
Mm. You smell a lot more weed in New York than Paris. I
Hmm.
couldn't say if that's because of the legalities. Like, I literally don't know. If someone said, "Oh, you can't smoke weed on the street in Paris," I would
Hmm.
believe it because it's nowhere near as common as it is in New York. But that's also just because New York is super dense and people smoke weed all over the place. They're probably Californians. And in Paris, I don't know. Obviously, people do, but it's not the same.
Hmm. Like, what are they doing in Paris? Obviously, you're there to see the abstract painting, the
Hmm.
figurative works, the new guard from South Korea gobbling up all that art market real estate. But aside from that, what restaurants are you checking out?
Um, I've only been to a couple of the standbys, like the real sort of normie cafe spots. I haven't really indulged in the fine dining or the avant-garde yet. Like I just met up with Joe Cole,
My
Broadway
homie.
Gallery. You might know him.
Hmm.
And we went to Cafe Charlotte, which is a Charlot, however you say it. Not Charlotte, which is a Rochester suburb. But that's
Good
just kind of
Charlotte.
a good Charlotte. But that's just kind of a regular sort of tourist popular cafe where you eat escargot and have a burger. It's good,
How
but
many
it's like a
scales did you
very
chug?
three.
Delicious.
They were great.
Are they
Yeah.
better there than on First Avenue?
Mm. Well, they put them in the shell, so you know
Are
the
they
whole
stunt shells
process.
though? We've been through this stunt shell shenanigans
Yeah, they're stunt shells. They're always stunt shells. They get the burgundy snails. You cook
in the
them up.
can. Yeah.
Yep. You cook them up. You put them with your little bit of pesto or parsley or whatever your little butter and drippings and herbs are. Then you put them back in the thing and you bake them. So yeah, they're stunt shells.
Hmm. How was the burger? Are all burgers the same?
Solid burger,
Hmm.
solid. But yeah, I gotta dip a little deeper into the real culinary scene. I'm gonna have to get on Paris Eater and do a little bit of research.
I know. Well, in London, I was like, our good buddy Joe Cole was eating at this place called Gymkhana, which is like my favorite restaurant in Mayfair, across from the gallery I used to show with. Just incredible Indian food. Oh my god! Right next door is a salt beef place, but I wanted to check out Rita's. Have you heard of Rita's?
Haven't been there.
It's our boy Gabe, who used to live in New York City when he was an NYU film student, but he did a pop up at Time Again. It's kind of getting hot. So I just wanted to shout out Rita's because I really love that man and I love that restaurant. I want to go.
And that's in Paris, you said, not London.
Nah, it's in London.
Oh, London. Okay,
It's kind of
got it.
doing great though.
Nice. Yeah, I gotta take a deep dive, but find myself some stunt shells. So what else is going on? I mean, I've seen
Yo, listen, Jalen Brunson's father is his own man. He can say what he wants to whomever he wants, even if it's the mayor of Slam Gennaro.
is Dante now persona non grata in New York City.
Hold on. Oh, that's a great teaser. But
Sips,
yeah,
sips.
we got. Oh, it's not
Oh, don't
basketball
mind
o'clock
me.
just yet. Oh, YSL. Oh, an empty YSL book.
I'm just reading my book about Hermes in Paris and
Hermes.
knocking them around. Hermes. Um, so let's see what else is happening. I saw another tweet that you put up. I get most of my news from your tweets.
Hmm.
That because they're
Trash.
just they're great. Someone said, feel like there's a correlation between why a lot of art feels so stagnant and the fact that mainly rich kids are the only ones getting to be filmmakers, writers, singers, etc. It's boring because people who have nothing to say are talking, are doing the talking. You said this idea is just a default premise that you hear every generation. Just ignore it.
Oh, I
Kind of
agree.
with that.
Right.
I think you're right.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
but
it's an
even
entry
more.
point. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. No, no,
No,
no,
no,
no.
rock.
You explain your thing, and then I got my point. I jumped the gun.
I mean, it's kind of similar to my Ozempic explanation, but if you're at a bar watching an exciting basketball game and you see it's a preseason game, it's the Lakers. You see LeBron James step on the court with Bronny James, and you're like, "Huh, I've never seen this before. This is interesting." And the person next to you is just like, "LaFraud James, he's no Michael Jordan." I'm like, "Shush! I don't have time for this. I need to enjoy the thing in the present. We can get to your thing when nothing is happening, but in order to experience in order to criticize anything like art, basketball, politics, there is an entry point. And I think we've all gone through that gate at some point, being like, wait, does Michael Jordan suck? It's like, yes and no, depending on how I think. And then you progress into other stuff. And I don't know how far you get. We get into the weeds with basketball. I get into the weeds with art. You get into the weeds with fake Hermes books. But like if that crab in the basket's dragging you back to art is bad right now because of nepotism, just walk away from it.
I think nepotism can exist and create some bad art. Sure.
It
And
is more relevant than ever. Nepotism is the story, right?
absolutely. And having, even without the direct nepotism, the advantages that come with wealth and access. Absolutely.
Or genetics.
That can be a step up, a leg up, a foot in the door. All these advantages to help someone who may not be that talented, but can put them in a position where they are talented enough to get a job that maybe someone who is more talented but didn't have the same access points is able to get, right? Like that's just in theory that happens. But the idea that someone who's rich doesn't have something to say doesn't really check out throughout, like, say, all of humanity. Like a lot of the great thinkers came from people who didn't have to work a horrible 9 to 5 job and then another job at night. Like a lot of good ideas have come from the leisure class because they have time to ponder things. If you are a bus driver and you go home and then you work part time somewhere else, it doesn't mean that you don't have good ideas. You just may not be able to actually formulate them. You may not have a chance to get them on paper or in a presentable form or even know what to do with them. Like, I'm not here to like ride for the rich intellectuals, but let's just not pretend that those classes haven't always sort of come from, or at least haven't been the same people for a long time.
And like, there has been decades and centuries of systemic racism and systemic classism. And why wouldn't rich people want to protect what makes them them, right? And there's only a few, to your point, there's only a few handful of people in every canal street, in every Hell Square, that are, I think, interesting in regards to one topic or another. And I think to just say the people who are poor and grassroots and carry their lunch pails, like, no Sinbin, the New York Mets are painted as underdogs, but they have the highest payroll in the major leagues. They're just skinny. Their star player is skinny. Ozempic, he does not famously, he does not celebrate around the bases when he hits a home run. He hit one of the most tremendous grand slams I've ever seen in postseason history, and he famously just ran around the bases with no emotions.
He
I'm
might be
calling
New York
Ozempic.
sober, just ketamine.
He zooted off that ketamine.
He's just in a K-hole.
Dr. K, as they say. But yeah, this kind of crosses over to my obsession with the word gentrification. To dismiss somebody new to a place like Chinatown or whatever, and to dismiss someone who has money is kind of like, it kind of overlaps, right? Which is to say, there's ulterior motives from somebody who has nothing to gain by having like a weird thought or a strange artwork. They've already won. So therefore, Bronny James doesn't have to excel at any one thing. He could just roam around his afterlife on the Staples Center court. What is it called now?
Doe.com?
Doe.com, Dokim.com, or Coinbase Arena, whatever. But they don't have the same challenges, and therefore they're not as ethical.
Well, I don't know specifically the tie-in with gentrification as much, but I just think the idea that people who are struggling are going to be the best at art. It's a nice thought, and it romanticizes the struggle, and it romanticizes the idea of the starving young artist, and like all they've got is their art and their craft, and if they can succeed at that, it will be fulfilling in all these ways, and it's a meritocracy, and it's their vision versus a dabbler, someone who's a dilettante and decides to be a painter because their family has money, and then decides to become a musician, and they don't have the same love for the art. And this may be true on a case by case basis. I just think the idea that like you're going to be better at it because you're desperate, maybe it only works for like Mary J. Blige.
Right.
When
I
she's really sad and going through stuff, that's when Mary does her finest work.
Rich people can't be sad. That's like my favorite thing. But like, I thought about Ice Cube, right? Like, maybe seismic, world-changing artist NWA shook the foundations of rap and music in general. Much success, turns into a very wealthy person, elevates himself to the highest class. Successful actor, businessman, musician. Loses his anger, kind of like changes his personality. Has a son who is clearly talented, but just by default, is his son disqualified from producing artwork like his father? Could his son ever have been in a group that had the same influence as NWA, or is he disqualified because he is Ice Cube's son?
Hmm. I mean, that's a tricky one because the jams of the father are not visited upon the son.
Are you sure?
I don't know if he had, if he'd made Death Certificate or made
This
Kill
is
at
true.
Will, then we could say, well, look, he had this set of advantages and he made this album and no one accepted it. But to my knowledge, he has not made, four rap classics. He's a pretty good actor.
Yeah,
I have
sure.
no objection to him,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have a role that was necessarily, you know, Doughboy in,
and this
Boys in
is
the Hood.
and this is different than sports and business and commerce, right? Because art has a kind of pure qualification to it. People have to accept it and then deem it good and then support it. It's not like, oh, he drops 30 points a game. He's undeniably good. Or like he makes his investment firm money. So like it doesn't matter that he has these advantages. He is good at his job. Art is kind of different. And like I think of Jacob Dylan a little bit. The Wallflowers had that great song, right? And it was confusing because he just looked like an evolved version of his father, but not artistically. He was like taller, handsomer, and more polished, ready for TRL. But his father was still, I mean, the most legendary songwriter of all time. So he was just
Dylan Brooks.
Dylan Brooks, right, right. Um, is there another famous Dylan in the NBA?
The only other one I can think of is like Dylon, 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 Dylon.
um, but yeah, I don't know. There are many things disqualifying in art, and the art market is not the the popularity of songs, the popularity of paintings or movies is not a democracy, right? It is almost a dictatorship. So like it's really hard, and this is the frustration of every single person who makes something. I think I am the best. I hope so everyone thinks they're the best at what they do. Every ball player should be like, I can probably take any player on this court. And then you kind of trickle down from there, being like, okay, maybe not LeBron. Oh, okay, maybe not a bench player. Okay, maybe not an NBA player, but I still have something to prove.
Um, uh, two points, and the first one is that my main objection is really to the idea of who has something to say, as opposed to saying that there aren't disadvantages and advantages that are unfair.
Mhm.
Like, wealth and access, it is unfair, and it does let people have careers in these industries that are really desirable, and it
This
really
is going
helps them, just
a,
like everything else.
a centuries old tradition, right?
This is going on forever. But I'm not saying let's forget about that. That doesn't matter. I'm just saying this idea of something to say is strange. Because what does that mean exactly? It doesn't mean that your art is either good or bad. It means that it has a message. It means that it is a morality fable. It means that, oh, here you are making trivial comedies, but I'm a young filmmaker from the sticks. I grew up eating dirt. I've got something to say. Here's my book. I'm JD Vance. Let's make a movie
right,
out of
right,
it. Here's
right,
Meemaw. It's like finally something to say.
right.
Mean Kampf. God damn it!
I
I
mean,
told you to read a book.
can we rank messengers? Can we apply ethical value to middlemen? Because let's say these ideas, I'm getting kind of stony. I'm on that Jefferson airplane, but let's see these ideas flow through the ether. And it is our jobs as human beings at a certain time in our lives to grab these ideas from the ether and try to make them real. But they exist around us all the time, they're alive. Um, does it matter who grabs it, or does the person embody the idea? is the box important?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like a lot of ideas aren't necessarily from people who are idea people, who have the
Mm,
best ideas repeatedly over and over. They may have one good one. You
mhm.
could be Stony on your Richard Jefferson airplane. I'm over here in my Al Jefferson airplane,
Big Al, you can call me Al. Yeah,
and
yeah,
he had one. He was an idea. He was a concept. He could do one thing. He could
yeah.
score in the post, and that was it. It's like you don't have to have a lot of good ideas. So the idea that the concept of a rich kid coming up with a good idea and being able to turn that into art, it's like, sure, of course they can.
Yeah. There's a shame there, though. We know plenty of rich people who out themselves, being like, "Do you know who my father is?" Or like, how did you rent out 3 storefronts for these amazing things that we love?" It's like sometimes they make the money, sometimes it's like I got a loan from my father, 0%.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the one thing you realize in New York that a lot of times the individual who is there throwing back shots at the bar for a few years, oh, your dad is John Lockheed and your mom is Mrs. Martin. It's like, oh, you're just decades deep, generations deep in like Vanderbilt money. Now I see.
Who is this smart ass kid just dropping knowledge, but mogging knowledge on everyone? Oh, it's the Johnson and Johnson kid. Oh, it's James Dolan's son.
Yeah, I mean, who is this guy owning Ruckus Records?
I mean, leisure, man. I think being my obsession right now is like the idea of boredom. I think as I raise kids, like I feel like people get bored now, and it's a different kind of boredom. Gen X was like the last generation to feel this negative space of like nothing, I think. And there was art made out of it, grunge, Beck, whatever, writing. And it evolved into what I want to talk about at some point. It's like the NPR scene, like Michael Pollan, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Michael Lewis, um, Children of Boredom, I think, instead of Children of Bodom. But I think that's a really valuable thing. And leisure and money creates space, right? My mom also used to say something really cool. She was like, work hard, always work hard, but understand what the price of work is. If your time is not equatable to the money you're getting back, you're getting screwed. Like you need money. She was like, forget your punk stuff. Money is valuable because it buys you space. It's not a thing. Money doesn't buy you a car you want. Money buys you boredom and time to think. And that's just a human life.
I mean, well, this kind of goes back to what we've been talking about, where the realities of life, especially in a city like New York or other ones that have a high cost of living, that the ability to survive there requires a commitment of time.
Mhm.
And if you have to commit X amount of time to something that is not your dream, then you may not be able to get to that dream because you simply just can't get around to it. And that's kind of one of the tragedies of this version of America that we're seeing is that Americans don't get time off. Americans work long hours. Whatever the rhetoric about Americans being lazy or migration or whatever, outside of all these political conversations, look at the time that you know we get off in comparison to say Scandinavia or other places in Europe. It's like, wow, Americans just beyond not getting health care or various benefits, Americans just work all the time. Maybe not by Asian standards, but like
Happy
certainly by
Columbus Day.
European standards.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was an Asian who was controversial, who didn't become mayor of New York, who had ideas that were adjacent to this, but just for this conversation, his conceit was use this extra money that I'll give you to go to the movies, to go get some escargot, to go to Applebee's, because you guys don't live your lives enough. Americans should live more life, right? I kind of love that as we're celebrating a holiday in America. I know you skip town on America on Columbus/Indigenous Peoples Day.
Mhm.
Um, it's weird not to. be working today, quote unquote. Like there's no school, there's no garbage pickup, there's no mail, there's no one's emailing me, as if they would anyway. But yeah, I'm so ingrained as an American where I'm like, ooh, if I work all day today on this perfect pod, am I getting ahead of myself? Can I mine my savings account
There'll
like
always be another
creatively?
another perfect,
Creatively,
always another perfect pod that
yeah,
needs to be dropped.
yeah.
The
I mean,
hamster wheel of perfection. But no,
is yeah.
no, sorry, no, I think I know what you're saying. Sorry to cut you off like that.
No, do
I
it.
just feel like the way that America preaches industriousness, and then you realize that the many of the hyper wealthy just kind of don't do anything. Oh, I own a whole bunch of buildings. Yeah, I check in on it. I got some lawyers doing stuff. I really just fly around on jets and live in 4 or 5 different places. But it's hard work that got me here. And you keep up that job at McDonald's, and one day you too can own, you know, 6 square blocks of Tribeca.
Yeah, don't keep dreaming. Dream big. Hard work can get you everything. Like, yeah, it's like people being like, really, all you need is to invest in stocks with dividends, and you can have it pay for your rent. I'm like, right, I'm gonna put the $3 million I have into Apple, and that'll give me those dividends. That'll just like give me the leisure time to sit on Canal Street and ruminate about modern painting.
Catholicism.
Hmm.
But yeah, exactly. It's like, all right. So you work really hard, but you also spend all of summer in Southampton. Got
Yeah.
it.
But then to your original point, maybe we're chilling in Amagansett and some douchebag drops like an incredible idea, like Dante DiVincenzo is the main piece in that whole trade. I'm like, damn, respect to the rich kids.
That's what I mean. They're sitting around. They're New York sober. It's 6 a.m. The sun is rising, over the Atlantic, glinting off the Long Island Sound, and voila, a light bulb
Takes,
pops.
takes.
Eureka moment.
Yeah.
DiVincenzo is the centerpiece. DiVincenzo.
I mean, we kind of all know it. Before we get into DDV, Slam Gennaro, do you want to talk about your favorite politician?
Well, the Kamala Harris campaign, and first, shout out to our friends who did the Hoopers for Harris event. That's Luch was working on that, and our buddy Jacob from AM Hoops. So they did their thing. They had a lot of players out there, including George the Messiah, the viral West Fourth older gentleman who throws up a lot of right-handed hook shots off the glass. He was in the mix. So Harris keeps migrating ever rightward, and it's almost become a satirical at this point, where she's shouting out Alberto Gonzalez as someone who has endorsed her at a meeting with Latinos. I'm like, Alberto Gonzalez is the torture guy who resigned in shame, and she's like, yeah, he endorsed me. Dick Cheney's daughter. I mean, this is really weird, right? Even Hillary didn't go this far right to my recollection. She did dabble in this way, but Harris is like to say Dick Cheney supporting me is a good thing is kind of crazy.
I mean, there was a president once named Barack Obama that filled his cabinet full of Republicans, right?
Yeah, she's also promised to do that. She's like, I'm going to reach across the aisle and get a Republican over here. Like the
Mm.
very same Republicans who are going to destroy democracy?
Does it make you want? Who are you going to vote for? You don't have to tell me who I'm going to vote for. You're going to vote for, but is there a chance that Trump could be getting a vote from Cookies Hoops?
No, I wouldn't vote for Trump. But I mean, I'll tell you right now, as it stands, I'm not going to vote for Harris. No, maybe a
Right.
protest vote for somebody, a Jill Stein, or maybe. the Hawk Tuah girl, someone more who deserves it more. But
Who would you write in
yeah,
that would pack the biggest punch?
hmm. Andrew Cuomo, president.
That's huge, huge.
That's a big endorsement.
That is a huge endorsement. Um, and there's a lot of people who share your opinion. Um, it is the voters that Democrats and Republicans desperately want to capture, disenfranchised would be Kamala Harris voters. Um, I don't think that demographic is avoidable. I think by nature, Democrats are disenfranchised by politics in general. And if you are, it's hard to really get behind someone who might win the presidency, because in order to win the presidency, you have to make certain political compromises that are annoying and maybe contradictory or hypocritical. That's what it takes to be the president of the United States. And I don't, I think everyone's vote is important and you shouldn't automatically vote for one or the other. And if Trump wins, whatever, because people wrote in Andrew Cuomo, that's just democracy. That's just how it has to be. Um, I I personally look through it like it is a kind of person I dislike, so I just don't pay attention to my fears of it because it is a position that I don't quite relate to.
I mean, for me, it's like I think Harris, her continuation and her wholesale embrace of the Biden administration's Middle Eastern policies is just something I can't rock with. And I understand that people are pragmatic and say, well, look, I still think she's better than Trump. I'm not even disputing that. To me, it's just like I'm not going to vote for someone who is allowing this kind of bloodshed and has for so long. There's no more surprises here. There's no more what's happening. There's no more ceasefire talk. It's like I don't even know how this ends. There's
It doesn't
seemingly
in
no
our
limit.
lifetime. It does not in our lifetime, or probably our kids' lifetime. Uh, our conflicts in the last 2 decades have been Middle Eastern.
Well, of course. I mean, if you just look back at the history of when Israel went on rampages and was reined in by American presidents, Harris and Biden have made it clear they won't do it. They won't rein them in. They won't stop
And Trump.
Bibi's and Trump won't either. So I'm just like, well, that's crazy. It's fully insane. So I can't vote for a president who does that. It's just immoral. And I'm not telling people not to vote for her. I get it. I understand the pragmatism. And I even understand her hedging rightward from like an electoral math standpoint, because for every person like me who says, yeah, I'm out on this, that's not as valuable as someone that you can turn from Trump to Harris. If you believe that that's possible, if you believe there are actual swing voters like, ooh, I don't know, and someone says, okay, Edward Meese is now endorsing Kamala Harris, and so it says, that's it. The Meese endorsement was it. I needed someone from Reagan's cabinet to go over to her side, and now I'm Team Kamala. That's worth two of me, just from a math standpoint, right? You know, that's like being up a full game versus a half a game.
It's like a point swing, right?
Exactly. So I do understand that calculus, but that calculus also exists in every election.
Yeah.
So the
How?
idea that
Yeah.
basically we have two Republican candidates running against each other, and no one from, center all the way to the left. It's like, well, if you're not even going to try to get my vote, like at least flirt with me. You know, give me a little wink. Like at least pretend that, you're kind of like
Mm.
open to some ideas.
You're doing the honest defense thing, though. You want Ben Simmons to shoot threes because if Kamala Harris talks too much about Palestine, she's going to alienate a lot of people because they're
But
mad about
who?
that.
But who is she going to alienate? 80% of
I don't think
Democratic
people are.
voters.
I don't think
I
people
just
are
mean,
as decided as you are.
No, I don't either. I'm just saying 80% of Democratic voters
Don't
wanted
believe
a
these stats.
ceasefire.
Yeah, don't believe these stats though. But fair enough. I think humane people want a ceasefire, and I do think it's a humanitarian disaster, our policy with the Middle East. But it's complicated. It's a long conversation. Ta-Nehisi Coates is trying to defend his book that he wrote about it, and there's a ton of controversy surrounding it. So I'm not going to pretend it's simple, but there's other things like I'll ask you about like human rights in American human rights, like healthcare and the right for women to control their own bodies, right, or help help themselves. I think that's a pretty huge issue. Um, if we don't want to deal with like feelings or anything like that, Trump's ideas about tariffs are certainly going to drive us to calamity.
Oh,
Um,
don't get me wrong. He is an absolute debacle. I just mean,
and Stein is
and
not going to win, right?
this is what I'm saying. I understand about the pragmatism. I get it. I'm saying I morally can't vote for Kamala Harris. I can't do it. I
Yeah,
can't vote for anyone from the Biden administration. Just morally, it's just not
yeah,
on the table at present, and
yeah.
it looks unlikely to change in a month. That's
I
just what it is. But I totally get people who say, I agree with you, Ben. I'm with you on this 100%, but I'm still going to vote for her because it's better than the alternative. I get it. I don't think these are complicated ideas to say, like, I just can't stomach that. And for someone to say, I don't want to stomach it, but I'm going to hold my
mm,
nose and do it, they're not that far apart.
yeah. On this pod, we've talked about uh, you at one point went down to Pennsylvania to stump for John Kerry, right?
My king.
Yeah, and his foreign policy is not too different than his party lines. Um, what in your life has changed? I mean, that was like 15, 20 years ago, right? What in your life has changed? Is it this specific? It's not even a war, genocide,
Yeah.
or have you changed as a voter?
I mean, to me, it's funny. As someone who was always like left leaning, I think Bernie just making these policies seem possible, even though they never became possible. I'd be
Yeah,
like,
he's
oh, there's
he's
actually,
endorsing Harris though. Him and
oh, of
AOC
course.
are endorsing Harris.
I'm just talking about him saying, hey, we're really going to try to get healthcare and talking about these ideas
Hmm.
and, winning 15, 17 states in a row or whatever it was against Hillary. To me, that was me believing that we should expect more from politicians.
I
And then
agree. Yeah.
being, of course, gravely disappointed by what Obama turned out to be, and
The Knicks are not
the
going to win a championship.
and the
Disappointment is a
Democratic,
part of life, right?
yeah, no, and the Democratic Party, stymieing Bernie when he was, you know, it,
A bad
taking the
candidate though.
driver's seat.
Not as
He's not
bad
a
as
great
Hillary,
candidate.
but yeah, not
So
as bad as
he's a
Hillary.
super old fart, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think those kind of events made me more cynical. So now
Hmm.
it's like,
Hmm.
hey, I'm not here because I want there to be like an incredible politician who's going to come and save the world. I don't see that person available to vote for. They're not there. But I don't want my name signed off on seeing the kind of stuff that we're seeing over the last year. You know what I mean?
I'm
It's more
I'm
that.
for that, man. It's
Like I'm like,
we have one
look, I
vote.
voted
Yeah.
for Biden, and seeing what Biden did, I'm like, I voted for this guy. Fuck out of here. I can't vote for this, and I
Hmm.
feel like betrayed is the wrong word. I'm like, Joe, I can't believe you would do this to me.
I
But
mean,
it's
it's
like,
funny.
hey, I signed off on this in my little puny minimal way.
Obama probably for people like us the most inspiring, the closest thing to a president we like, right? His first term. And then he turned into a president we didn't like at all, in my opinion, personally. And then Biden was his VP. And then we have Harris as his VP. Talk about a certain kind of nepotism, uh, uh, a family tree of politics, right? Um, and you know, man, people should vote for exactly who they want to vote for. Um, I don't think the stakes are higher than ever. I know we hear that every election. I don't believe that to be true. I believe in our country and I believe in the systems of checks and balances. Trump tried his hardest to get shit through and it didn't work. It's debatable as to how powerful his coalition within places of power are compared to the last time he was president, but we have to trust the process, right? And we may not get the perfect country that we all agreed to, but man, people losing their minds over this shit, man. Gotta touch some grass.
I gotta say, the having a kind of a clear cut stance on this has really enabled me to totally zone out on all the other political talk.
Oh,
It's
I
kind of
fucking feel it.
nice.
Yeah.
Just well, look, if you're not going to put an end to this ethnic cleansing, and I can't vote for a Democratic Party that will, and you don't deserve an election if you do, and you don't deserve to exist, in my opinion, if this is something that you are going to support, and at every level, whether that's money, weapons, diplomacy. I mean, across the
Sounds like
board.
a Cameron record. I would listen to that.
Sex, drugs, entertainment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like if you're gonna be like going full throttle on this, then you don't really deserve to exist as a party because I'm not asking for anything. Like I'm really not asking for shit. I've given up on healthcare, given up on criminal justice reform. I'm just asking you to lay off the whole mass murder dealy. Like just please chill out on that. I don't want anything for me. I don't want anything.
Yeah.
Just stop.
Yeah. I mean, I follow everything, but I always come back to that story I've told here numerous times, which is halftime, Knicks game. I run to the falafel shop on Houston to grab a sandwich. Oh, it's piping hot. It's delicious. I love Barraquette. Some drunk dude is like,
Mm.
hey, starts slurring me, right? Asian stuff. Go back to your country, all that stuff. And I just run down the street because halftime is not that long. And he was like, hey, I'm talking to you. Do you hear me? And in my mind, I was like, I have such a delicious sandwich under my arm. The Knicks are in a tight game. I cannot let this ruin my night. I have a life to live and it's simple, but I just want to live it. But I hear you. I'm paying attention to you. I know you're there, but I choose to be fucking more chill about it than I normally would be. Yeah, it hurts my feelings. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. But hey, man, I got I got some Walt Frazier to listen to. And I feel as I get older the same way about politics. I follow all this shit, man. I'm watching all this Ta-Nehisi Coates interviews, debates. I'm reading the comments. But something about me, it's sad because I don't feel angry anymore. I just feel like, damn, that's fucked up. Anyway, how can I make my day better?
I mean, that's really natural, and I think it's true. It's also, and I'm saying this to people who feel passionate and are upset. It's like try to walk and chew gum, and I don't mean that in a
It'll make you a better voter.
I
It
don't mean
really
that in a
will.
snide. I don't mean that in a
Yeah.
snide way. I'm saying if you are watching what's occurring and are horrified and upset and want to take action, do it for sure. But if you can also watch some hoops or eat a good sandwich,
If you're a child.
try not to be consumed because that's not good for you. But I also am saying I am totally
Enraged.
understandable of
Yeah, yeah.
people who are beside themselves and really struggling to know how to act and what to do because it is a really helpless time when we have an election coming up and you're like, well, wait a minute. The idea is that we're here to save democracy, we're going to save the country, right? So it's clear that my vote on this matter that is so important right now, and we're seeing the shocking visuals on an hourly basis. My vote can't affect that at all. Just fully irrelevant, huh?
Trump is a broken clock, right twice a day. But what he got right was he dragged the whole process of politics and the evolution of politics back down. So instead of being like, the Knicks should try to find a stretch five. He was like, what if you only had 4 players? It's like, no, we need 5 players to play the game. It's like, no, I think 4. And you're like, we needed a stretch five. We needed a modern point of view on offense. But now we're just arguing about like how many players we have on the court. Like,
The
God damn
trade's
it.
about DiVincenzo. It's about DiVincenzo.
Yeah, exactly. So that's frustrating. And I think like in our life, and this is maybe where I developed my malaise, to borrow if you're in Paris, my discontent is the evolution of healthcare and foreign policy and the economy kind of came to a grinding halt where like, are Nazis okay? I'm like, oh motherfucker. I don't are we doing this?
Well, it's
No,
kind
they're
of
not
amazing.
okay. Yeah.
Remember the whole thing where it's like eventually every internet argument gets back to being like you're a Nazi.
Yeah.
And that's changed to everything has gotten back to maybe Nazis were right.
Yeah.
Like that's the new modern version
Yeah.
of
But have you
X,
read
formerly
Mein
known as
Kampf?
Twitter.
Yeah,
It's like read a book.
It's like he makes a good point. I'm like, Jesus. And now, how do you feel about as we transition to hoops? How do you feel about Trump throwing a rally and on the court that Ewing built?
I mean, who was Ewing campaigning for? Remember there was a Dolan candidate for
Oh,
mayor.
really?
Yeah, it wasn't Dolan, but it was a Dolan surrogate. Like a Dolan had a stooge, and it was like a.
Steve Mills was running for president?
It kind of was though.
Yeah.
It was an older black guy, businessman. Let's say Morgan Stanley or something. That's not specific, but it was that like an older guy in finance or banking,
Mhm.
and he was backed by Dolan, and they trotted out all these
Oh,
old
yeah.
Knicks, and then
Yeah.
Eric Adams came through and you know put the cuffs on him.
Hey, Dolan's hanging out with the white knuckles with the tax abatement, the property tax abatement. That is worth a ton of money for him, man. $20 million at least, I think.
Small change when you're shelling out this kind of cash for OG Adenubi.
You got to stay under the second apron. We don't want to pay that tax that we don't give a fuck about. But yeah, like they had a Nazi rally famously at MSG back in the day when your boy the H dog, the H bomb was alive and campaigning, and all the banks in America were like, "Is this going to be the guy? Because we should probably invest in him."
Yeah, you're talking about the American Bun Society.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Wasn't
the
that?
images are there. At this point,
Oh yeah,
most
yeah,
people have probably seen them, but
yeah.
just Google search it. It's like Nazi American Bund Rally MSG. Like, boom, swastika MSG.
It's like
There's Freewell.
wasn't this a plot line in Seinfeld? It's like, well, it was based on a real thing. It's like, what?
I mean, there's literally a Nazi rally.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a different kind of Nazi, though.
Yeah. I mean, the New York City and the MSG owners did not see that coming. Anyway, did you see Dante
Bund B
DiVincenzo?
over here.
did you? Okay, so the Timberwolves came into town last night. We're recording on a Monday. Video tribute for Julius Randle. LOL. I love him. That's cool. Some heartfelt moments for Slam Gennaro. Well deserved because he hit the most memorable Knicks shot of a lifetime last postseason. Got into some shit. Jalen Brunson's father, the Rick dog, the Rickster. What happened, man?
Well, the clip I saw that you're referring to was at first to the free throw line,
That was amazing.
and Dante was turning to his right, like chirping towards the sideline, and people thought he was talking to Jalen Brunson, who was to his right, but he wasn't though. He was talking to the bench. And if you look at the reaction of the Knicks players, some of them are kind of turning to the side towards where Jalen Brunson's father, Rick Brunson, a former Knick, and also a former executive who may have gotten ousted from Minnesota for sexual harassment.
It's a
Maybe,
complicated time.
maybe a complicated time. I just don't know the story. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Complicated
There
time
was
for the
talk.
Rickster. Yeah.
Let's talk of that. Yeah. So it's Dante chirping, like, see what happens when they let you run the team. Now, what did he mean?
Is he a nepo baby accuser? Okay, so let's
Oh,
try
sorry.
to
I was reading an Hermes book. Sorry. Go on.
yeah. Let's try to put these pieces together, Law and Order style. Jalen Brunson, I mean Rick Brunson, popular Nick among the front office, rostered not because of his skills, perhaps. Like I think he was a replaceable backup, but a fan favorite to some degree because he looked like a, a fan. He was not tall, not skinny, well skilled as a point guard, and
Very
I think
hard nosed guy, tough
yeah,
guy,
exactly.
like to scrap. He was sort of the emblematic Nick. He
Yeah,
was a tough, gnarly little guard. New York fans love those guys.
he was kind of like not skinny, maybe had a wagon. So he appealed to the whole population of NBA fans to a degree. His son shows up, and they're like, "Yo, you're the Rickster's son. Do you want to be a basketball player one day?" And as he grows up, they're like, "Yeah, you're going to be the starting point guard of the Knicks. Fuck this." So it's like it is ordained, preordained, as he's in Villanova playing with Dante DiVincenzo, Mikal Bridges, and your boy Josh Hart. Dallas Mavericks draft him. Tampering, finds his way to the Knicks. Nepotism, whatever. Arguably the Ricksters' plan the whole time. DiVincenzo, who's been along for a lot of that ride, probably senses this too. He's Vincent D'Onofrio in this situation. And he's like, motherfucker, you're not pulling the strings, but you are pulling the strings. You sitting there with your son, and now I'm here in Minnesota as the enemy. Like, you ruined everything, man. I think that was a pretty awesome take by DiVincenzo, and that fire is what why we love him.
Yeah, it felt in some ways as if he might blame Jalen Brunson to a degree, but Jalen Brunson is also a peer and a teammate. You know what I mean? Even if he was like, yeah, look, he's a star and
And
probably
a
signed
best
off on
friend.
this.
Yeah.
I'm saying, and you understand he probably signed off on this, that he is such an important part of the franchise, and that Jalen Brunson probably hits him and says, dude, I had no idea. I did not see this coming. Wow, that's crazy. And they go through those motions. But ultimately, he is his peer. That's his buddy. And he would look at Rick and say, well, I'm okay to blame Rick for this, that Rick is involved in this situation, that he's the one who's tied to the front office. He's the one who's been putting this plan together to add Mikal Bridges and Carl Anthony Towns. Like, this is not my buddy, because it really isn't. I don't think it's was Jalen Brunson's, you know, machinations that led to this trade, and Cat and Mikal Bridges. I just don't, and Hartenstein going elsewhere. I don't think that's Jalen Brunson. I think that's the front office, and maybe just Rick is closer tied to that. But there had to be something else also. There had to be some history that we're missing. Because why would he say when they run the show? Was he talking about this is what happens because you're running the show, or is it that, like, wait until we see if you're running the show? I couldn't quite distinguish between the two.
And there was a rumor weeks ago when the trade went down that Dante DiVincenzo was unhappy taking a secondary role. Ian Bagley reports this on Twitter, X, and he says DiVincenzo didn't like the idea of Mikal Bridges coming in and taking his minutes, pushing him to the bench again, and not fulfilling his destiny as a Knicks third man, you know?
Yeah.
And uh DiVincenzo yesterday is just like, that is farther from the case. I loved my role. I accepted my role. I enjoyed Mikal Bridges. And Ian Begley was like, I stick by my reporting. Like, I heard that and I reported it. Talking about critics evolving with like the what they see, the audience evolving with the art. I don't know, and um Dante DiVincenzo certainly seems like a thoughtful, angry dude who plays with that edge. Mikal Bridges feels like the tipping point of this entire story, right? No Mikal Bridges, no 5 draft picks going that way. We're sitting here probably with Isaiah Hartenstein, re-signed OG Anunoby, who also was rumored to be upset at the Mikal Bridges ad because it took money off the table for him. Interesting, a different future for New York. Not to be Gladwellian here, but like it was building up to something, and Mikal Bridges pushed it over.
Yeah, when we look at this Knicks team and when they don't win a title, because only because they probably won't,
They
because most
won't.
teams
They
don't.
won't.
So look, they have a chance to. They're going to be really good. This is not me even being critical of their plan. But when we look back and say, where did this go wrong? They had a chance to win a title and they didn't. Like, just because this is how, unfortunately, fandom operates. Most people will go back and say it all went wrong with the cat deal. That was when we made our mistake. That was the tipping point. But yes, of course it was the Mikal Bridges deal. That was it. That was when they sank all of their chips into that move. And there's no shortage of bad trades that people have made, right? If we look back and say, oh well, the Celtics totally rebuilt their entire organization off of that deal with the Nets, where Billy King had the longest view in the room, and like that was a really bad trade. Like the Sixers Bynum deal, that was extremely bad. You gave up Vooch and first round picks and Andre Iguodala for a guy who never played. Like that was a really bad trade.
He was so good in LA.
I, right, but that's what I mean. There was some qualifiers there. He didn't
Yeah.
play. He was hurt, but he was really good. But this the Bridges trade, man, it's weird. I I just look at them like they gave up so much for like Mikal Bridges, and it also necessitated another move because
They
then they had too
panicked.
many
Right.
wings. They had to move Randall, then DiVincenzo got roped into that to make the move. And I don't think that the Cat deal is a problem. I think they're better off right now than they were before that deal in terms
I
of
agree.
competing for a championship. They're extremely good. They match up perfectly with the Celtics as much as you can try to do that in the
Yeah.
modern league. They have a honestly, they're a really, really good team, set up really well. But the Bridges thing is that's what turned this. That's
Yeah.
what pushed them into being this team. And it may work out, but yeah, I don't know. You saw him on the sideline there?
Bridges? Why?
Yeah, yesterday.
Why? What'd you
While
see?
that all was all going on, he was kind of on the sideline, like
Uh,
behind his little Hermes book. He was
whispering?
kind of yeah, he had like a funny expression on his face, and it was like when you made this happen or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks got rid of, for better or worse, Julius Randle had the New York disposition, I think. He's a grinder, Mamba mentality, played with Kobe, angry at the fans. Like, that's New York stuff. DiVincenzo through and through, New Yorker, Timberlands, Yankees hat. And then you got like two quote unquote soft guys, right? Mikal Bridges, who's friendly. I'll call Anthony Towns, who insecure men make fun of. But the Mikal Bridges trade was fascinating because it was searching for an idea that maybe wasn't a basketball idea and wasn't a winning idea, but it was just like we have the chance to acquire a story that GQ ends up being like, well, we wouldn't have written about the Knicks team, but like since you got these 4 Villanova guys, we're gonna get the Cookies Hoops legend Jason Aceto to shoot it, friend style with the frame, and get Sam Shub to write about this extraordinary story that doesn't really necessarily make a better team than they were last year. But it's something Leon Rose, James Dolan, World Wide West all signed off on, Rick Brunson. But it was just an idea. And my beef the whole time was like, without a Catholic school dog in this fight, I don't care that these guys are friendly. I don't care that they went to college together. You just have to give the team the best chance to win. And I'm not sure in the moment, yeah, adding Mikal Bridges is better than having 5 draft picks. But those 5 draft picks could get you a lot of things.
and to have them is just money in your wallet. And they got into the weeds. They started making Ben Dietrich's order of escargot, and
Mm.
they complicated it. It's like, I'm gonna go in the backyard and catch the snails myself. I'm like, bro, you don't have enough time. Just pop the can, put them in the stunt
Stunt,
shells. It's like,
stunt
no,
shells, guys. Come on.
yeah. It's like, no, I want the real shells. And then all of a sudden, you're compensating. Like, send them out a cat. Like make them happy. Send them out a win now dish, and I think that's interesting.
We've talked a lot about the Knicks, and we're going to move on. But the last point is that maybe we were sort of wrong about.
Never.
No, that can't be it.
No, that can't be right. Yeah. When you said it out loud, I was like, nah.
That's preposterous.
But if we were wrong.
Well, I don't mean me and you. I mean the royal we, like all of us.
Oh, the
If
royal
all of us
ivy
thought
we. Yeah.
Yeah, no. If all of us assumed that they made the Bridges deal because it was the story, and they obviously paid a premium because of that story, but and it would be right to say like, yeah, I think that was a component of this. It was trying to bring these Villanova guys together, blah blah blah. But then they immediately just shed DiVincenzo. They're like, yeah, actually, it wasn't really about that at all. And I was like, wait, it's just a Celtic story.
Yeah, that's like
It's just wings. We need 3 wings. Brunson happened to go to school with them, and he's our guard. Hart is a defensive wing. And you know what defensive wing we can compel to ask for a trade? Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
We're going to overpay for him, but who else? Like, yes, maybe we could try to get, I don't know, Trey Murphy 3 or something, who I think is probably about as good of a player. Maybe. But we know that he will ask to come here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in a bubble, Mikal Bridges is a good player. Weird shot development. Did you see Ant's trash talk? He was like, Nbom effed up his shot. He's cooked, like what to that degree, because his shot kind of release point is different than we remember. It's higher, it might be better, but it looks weird.
Well, you realize that all these guys are on the same basketball IG that we are.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
Ant's watching this, yeah.
I was like, so Ant saw the same video that we all saw and was waiting to talk shit about it in the game so that he would then go viral saying it because of what he had seen before. Like, absolutely, that's the case. He saw that clip of Mikal doing his like weird mantis-like wind-up and was like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna say that on camera and then and that'll work.
I that stuff doesn't bother me because
Oh, I like it. I'm saying I think we know how this synthesized. It was literally Ant on his phone being like, "God damn, this shot looks fucked up." It's like, all right, I'm getting involved in this story.
Seriously, and like all the cats bothered by all that. It's all there. We're in it. The critic is in the building, but yo, I was walking around my neighborhood of Bed-Stuy yesterday, crossing Tompkins, and I was like, damn, I gotta text Luch, Doe, and Ben, the Cookie Soup's classic crew. The Brooklyn Nets are practicing in the public court there. They had risers up, they had food trucks of just like jerk chicken, hometown barbecue. I was like, yeah, Caribbean food. I'm like, that's fair. Weird, but fair. Like trying to really do the New York thing, and
Caribbean food makes sense. Hometown barbecue makes sense. They're going to Brooklyn.
I know, but like, where was the smorgasbord? Where was the ramen burger? I guess like Bed-Stuy is really holding on to the Nas. Yo, I was 2 blocks away from it, and I just heard like a Biggie rock block, and I was thinking to myself like, oh, he's rapping up about Bad Boy. I'm like, this takes on a different tone. Like it kind of feels dark now, as the allegations pile up for Diddy. And as I get closer, I'm like, oh, it's the motherfucking Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, the Nets. It's funny because their name being Brooklyn has just commanded all of their marketing since the jump. It's like you go to the game, we're gonna hear Brooklyn, 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 Brooklyn. Just it's incessant. It's Brooklyn all the entire game. And as you said, all right, we're in Brooklyn. It's gonna be Brooklyn food. We're gonna hear Biggie yelling Brooklyn. And like when the Knicks do things like that, they don't have that same fascination. It's like, no, it's a Knicks game, but you're gonna hear all types of music.
It's
You're
Billy
gonna,
Joel. Yeah.
but it's not gonna be all. It's not a New York theme park.
Right.
You're gonna hear different stuff, and yeah, maybe there'll be like a Jay-Z song, and there'll be some mentions, but it's not a Brooklyn zoo.
Well, I'm like, when did Biggie become the only thing? I never hear like Wu Tang anymore. I mean, that's Staten Island, obviously. The branding is off, but
I mean, Jizza.
yeah, that's true. The genius. Um, I think I think the Nets had nowhere else to pivot, right? And it's odd because here the Nets stand, and you could argue without winning anything yet, New York has kind of like become a certain epicenter of sports, right? You got the Liberty in the finals, you got the Mets and Yankees
Hmm.
in the semifinals of the baseball tournament, and the Knicks are back in the news, like in GQ. Um, New York is having a moment, and I feel the identity crisis of the Nets speaks of the overall identity crisis of the city in general.
I mean, from what I've heard from Nets fans, they are really happy about where the team is in comparison to last year. That the
Bullshit.
Bridges deal,
No. Oh, okay. Fine. Fine. Draft picks.
well, I don't mean before last year started. I mean the malaise that set in partially through and being like, okay, now we got whatever. We got 10 first round picks for KD. We're going to try to get Cooper Flag. We're rebuilding. Everyone cares about other teams. We're irrelevant. We're not being mocked. No one's taunting us. Our KD and Kyrie aren't being flambéed by the BMM. We're just back to where we're supposed to be, which is irrelevant, and maybe we'll get one of these stars, and
Right.
we'll start to build around a top prospect, and we can try to replicate OKC. A bunch of picks, a bunch of young guys being bad, and we'll see what happens.
Mhm.
But they are kind of, yes, outside of the periphery of the New York sports moment. But I also don't think they're in like a bad place
Yeah.
and because of how they feel. But yeah, the ones you mentioned, like I don't pay attention to baseball, but I'm kind of rooting for the Subway Series. That's kind of fun. I
Fuck
think
yeah.
I think a Dodgers Yankees would be cool, but hey, we live in New York. Subway Series it.
Let's go. I mean, I'm burying the lead a bit because Tompkins Street, Tompkins Ave, as it exists now, like they were practicing right where that koi pond was, that viral koi pond. It is like a different neighborhood, even compared to when I moved in. So it was heavy on the 90s feel of rap, like the Nets cause stuff, the Nets written in graffiti letters, barbecue, jerk chicken. And the crowd that had gathered there out of curiosity or interest in general was half like old heads who were just like vibing with Biggie, and like kids, like millennials, but also a lot of Zoomers who had moved into the neighborhood, trickled down from Bushwick, who don't give a fuck about Bad Boy, who are dressed up in like Kalina Strada type stuff, just like chilling on fandom spectrums, no allegiances to real hip hop. And I thought it was so interesting. Like kids were like, yo, what's happening here? I'm like, the Nets are allegedly going to practice here. That's cool. And they're like, who's on the Nets now? And I'm like, Ben Simmons is a great player. They're like, we have no idea. And they just like walked off, like
Like the God Ben Simmons. You're like, wait, he hasn't played in 4 years.
they're like, until he keeps defenses honest, I am not supporting this public practice.
Look,
Um,
I'm not going to be fooled
yeah.
by another grainy video in which someone captures him taking a couple jumpers during the
Yeah.
off season in an empty gym,
Yeah.
getting some shots up. I'm not going to be fooled by that again. I've been
Yeah.
hurt too many times by a video of him taking 12 footers that someone recorded on their camera.
Right. And within the microcosm of just New York Knicks Nets, we've talked about for years, like the true Nets fans are going to be the kids that grow up with the Nets, and they're kind of older now. They're becoming adults. Like, of course, Knicks fans could turn into Nets fans, and many did, but the true heads, the day ones, will be the kids that grew up there. But they're not appealing to the kids, right? The Knicks are a very kid friendly brand. Um, and the Nets are kind of like they've identified real hip hop street stuff. And I wonder what choice they have. What they did was awesome. I wish the Knicks would practice in Hudson Yards, would practice on West 4th. That would be tremendous. But the Nets did everything right, but may be bound by their own shadow.
Well, they've been spitting the same bars and popping the same locks and doing the same beatbox since they came to Brooklyn. Remember that
Which
Sports
works
Illustrated cover?
until Puff Daddy happens, right? It's like they've cornered
Well,
themselves.
well, it's more that when they came to Brooklyn and they marketed it as like the hip hop team, that was what, 15 years ago at this point.
This is what I mean. Not literally Puff Daddy, but you're identifying you're moving into a crumbling building. It's falling apart and you're moving all your stuff in. I'm like, maybe you should rebuild the building and then move in.
Yeah, it's just that, when you came over there and it was 10 years ago. Yeah, it was, I mean, more, it was 11. The New Look Nets were the ones that came in with um,
Kuruks,
KG.
Bogdanovi. Oh my god. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
AK-47.
I'm saying Lopez, Darren Williams, KG, Joe Johnson, Paul Pierce. Like that was a solid team. They were pretty good. I mean, they deserve scorn, and they kind of try to cheat and build like a fake team, and they gave up too much, and it ended up burning them badly. But that's a solid if wildly overpriced team, and sure. But that was 11 years ago.
hmm
11 years ago, Biggie had still been dead for a while,
Oh yeah.
but but you could at least nod to like Jay-Z and Biggie a little more recently.
Yeah.
But when you're talking, we're going to build around Biggie Smalls as a brand, it's like, yeah, but yeah, but he died like 30 years ago, man.
Which is good
I
because he can
mean,
never right. He can't do anything bad now.
no, it's just crazy to think like, all right, we're going to build a team around someone who's died 50 years ago. But well, that's insane. What do you mean? No, the whole branding is Charlie Chaplin. Like it's all Chaplin. All we do, the whole everything. You come and think it's like little like Chaplin mustaches and bowler hats.
Easy,
Like
easy. We're talking MSG here, the house that the H bomb built. I
Bun
mean,
B.
I thought New York City would have Liberty fever, but Caitlin Clark being bounced really sapped the energy of the WNBA. I mean, people are still watching, but it is not like it was when Caitlin Clark was playing. Am I wrong
Yeah,
about this? I don't know.
no, I think you're right. But that's okay. I mean,
I agree.
these
I
games
agree.
are these games
They're
these teams are
good
good.
games.
The
Yo,
games are good. The teams are good. Liberty had a great record. Lynx had a great record. They both have, top three players basically. Top four, whatever. They're all like
they're
they're all
stars.
in that
Yeah.
mix. Yeah, I mean, out of the top five players or top four, two of them are in this series. You know,
hmm
um, so yeah, good basketball. I think the Caitlin Clark thing. There was a Cookies blog about it, so dropped last week, along with an amazing T-shirt. Very, very elegant, very refined. The Maestro tee featuring Caitlin Clark, and
You
the
know,
article
in homage to Big
details
Al Jefferson.
of Jefferson Starship.
Yeah, the one and only.
Uh, but the article or the blog post, whatever you want to call it, goes into some of the numbers. And to me, and we haven't talked about this really, I don't think. was that the WNBA is a time warp to 10 years ago. If you look at offensive rating, 3 point rate, 3 point percentage, effective field goal percentage, all these numbers, they're almost identical to the NBA from 10 years ago, in 2015. Like, remarkably so.
Mhm.
And that's also when James Harden started really popping
Mhm.
for the Rockets. So when I look at Caitlin Clark and I look at her skill set, and we sit here trying to figure out what she is and what what she represents, and there's all these other conversations about race and privilege and the existing WNBA being black and queer versus who she is and her right wing fans. Like, yeah, that's all interesting and great for ratings and great for the attention that you're talking about, that she brings to the game, that without her is sort of absent. She's just James Harden.
Mhm.
James Harden, one of the best offensive players in history. So just is not a measure of being diminutive.
Right.
I'm saying it's simple. She's
Right.
James Harden.
Mhm. In a vacuum of just basketball.
Yeah, she does James Harden stuff. She doesn't play exactly like him. She doesn't get to the line as much. But overall, her abilities of scoring high volume threes, creating layups, creating threes for her teammates, elite offense, elite efficiency. She's James Harden. She is
Well,
first to market with a skill set that is going to be where the WNBA will be evolving, in the same way that the NBA evolved around the contours of James Harden, who dovetailed with the alterations in the game.
I think of James Harden, to go along with the theme of this perfect pod, like Malevich, right? Paints the white square. Everyone's like, it's just a white square. And he's like, oh, it's perfect. It's like, this is unethical. This is not painting. My kid could do this. And the way the debate around James Harden was like, this is not the right way to play basketball. We know statistically it's efficient. Nerds are getting their minds blown, but we hate watching it. We hate the product and we hate the result and we hate the person. Caitlin Clark is Ad Reinhardt, right? With the language we know about the white on white painting, Ad Reinhardt says, I'm going to paint the last abstract painting ever and make it black. I'm going to paint a black square. And we already know the debate of James Harden, but Caitlin Clark is coming through in a different context in the WNBA and saying, I am the fully evolved guard in this position, in this vacuum. There's no more after me, and there's no more before me. This is it. I am the black cube because I do everything to its potential.
Except with Caitlin Clark, I think in the same way that James Harden was, he's a one of one. He's a genius. He created an archetype. But then there's more James Hardens.
Yeah,
They just
he's
look
not a one
different.
of one. He's the
Right.
first of 10, right? One of
And I
10.
think that's what Caitlin Clark is.
Mm,
But she's a one of one right now.
I
And
think
that's
she's a one of one.
because and that's because of not only how good she is, but all these other factors.
But
Right? James
there's a
Harden
right.
doesn't have those things. James Harden isn't a mesh in a race war. James Harden doesn't have
This is what I mean.
this
You
hype
cannot
machine. James,
yeah.
you can't reproduce what she has because of the hype. But as a basketball player, you're going to see a Jokic version of her down the line. There'll be a Luka version of her, someone who does the same things except is 6'5". Eventually, just as time unfurls, but they won't be Caitlin Clark because Caitlin Clark has all this other stuff.
I mean, Sabrina Ionescu is not too dissimilar to Caitlin Clark, but didn't have this level of debate around her. Maybe because she didn't have an Angel Reese counterpart. Maybe because Kobe Bryant co-signed for Sabrina when she came out. Maybe because she was hurt and took a while to develop. Or maybe didn't have the NCAA success. Didn't shatter records in the same way. When I say Caitlin Clark is the end, I'm not saying it's the end. It's a new beginning, Star Wars wise. But like, the the chatter of race, the chatter of privilege, and the direction where this product is going kind of ends with her. At this point, it just becomes it. Do you know what I mean?
Except that once these sides have been set, once people have aligned with pro Caitlyn, anti Caitlyn, and that anti Caitlyn force, it's Angel Reese for now, but it's not going to stay Angel Reese. It's going to become Paige, or it'll become Juju. It'll become someone else. And this is also why Caitlin Clark is so special, because that she is going to have so much success. She's going to break records, and she's going to have so many haters, and they're going to keep bringing more enemies for her to vanquish. And maybe one of them will vanquish her. Someone might be better. But this is the same way with, like, if you were AI fan versus Kobe, like, all right, AI kind of faded out. Well, what do we have here? LeBron James. Okay. So now all the AI fans are going over to LeBron because Kobe is the ultimate nemesis. So I think we're going to see that with Caitlin Clark. And the debates aren't going to die down. And if she fumbles coming out of the playoffs next year again, they're really short. They're Hobbesian. They're short and brutish. It's like, hey, you've a pretty good team. Cool. First round, you're going against a squad that won the equivalent of 60 games. Like, you're out of here in two.
Yeah.
Like, Monday to Wednesday, you're out of the playoffs. If that happens to her again, we're going to get the James Harden stuff. She's a choker. She's a bum. Her numbers are hollow. Like, we know how this plays out. And, like, it's both, like, delicious and kind of depressing.
I mean, this is my contention is ideas have a lifespan and they live their lives and die. And there's no doubt that people made paintings that looked similar to Ad Reinhardt after him. And the debate continues. But what he was talking about kind of died with his work. And I think the debate with Caitlin Clark will continue. But what we had this year will change, and we can almost put a bow on when she was eliminated from the playoffs. I think we could probably put a bow on this chapter of Caitlin Clark, but it was a really substantial chapter. I would say the book, and then you get sequels, number 2, number 3, number 4. I don't think, however good Juju is, it's not the same as Caitlin Clark. It's an empty book. It says Hermes on it.
No,
We
I'm
just
with
can't
you on
take a
that.
new thing and compare it to her. She
I
did.
guess what I mean is that what makes LeBron so incredible is that he's had rivals. He's had all these, various arguments and sects and offshoots of people from different camps, the Kobe's,
Sects.
sects. I mean, look, Bronny's here. He's got a boner baby. It
Sex,
happened.
drugs, entertainment,
Sects.
and LeBronny James.
Sex. Like, yeah, he's sending like dirty photos over.
The Rickster.
But the idea of, like, LeBron actually validating it is what was so amazing and cool, was that no one does it. No one validates everything, and LeBron did. Like,
I know.
when he went and beat Golden State in Cleveland,
No, it's crazy.
like
Crazy.
in Game 7, you're like that's it. We just witnessed the ultimate validation of what we.
His
It
second
never
Hall of Fame
happens.
career before his
Right.
third Hall of Fame career.
Right. It just never happens, and we saw it. That occurred. So with Caitlin Clark, the odds are, in the same way when I say when the Knicks don't win a title, it's like when Caitlin Clark doesn't live up to her hype, because it's so impossible. Maybe she will. I want her to. I want
Yeah.
everyone to succeed. I want them to.
Yeah.
But when she doesn't, and we look back and say, yeah, she was just like James Harden, loser. Then she got fat. Then she hung out with Lil Baby. Then she was just in the strip club too much. And, like, we don't know how her story will go. Maybe it'll be like LeBron, and that would be really cool. but like you can't bet on any of that.
This is my point, right? It's like you can make a black painting after me, but I made the black painting.
Yeah, I mean, Caitlin Clark did this. She is her, and she's going to be the greatest offensive women's player on the by math.
Mm-hmm.
She will.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if she stays healthy, she will. Like, then it's inevitable. They're going to keep building a team that fits better around her. They're going to be the best offense in the league because she's singular.
Her contract's
That
going to be
team,
up, and she's going to sign with the Liberty. Amazing.
yeah. How long is her contract?
I don't
Do
know
they
how
do
much.
they are they structured like the ones in the
NBA.
NBA with restricted free agency? Like, is she in Indiana for 9 years or is it like 3?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know their CBA.
She's also already 22. They're a
This is
lot different from a Wemby. Wemby was 18, 19.
this is the melancholy thing about the WNBA. It's the careers can be interrupted by life easier than the privilege men have, not interrupting life with like family care and what you want, what Caitlin Clark envisions her future to be. We kind of have to ride with it, you know. It's not as clear as like a man just like playing through health. Speaking of which, is Joel Embiid ever going to be the same?
I mean, every now and then you'll see these clips of him. Like, oh, it's an old Instagram reel of him playing one-on-one against Jason Tatum, and everyone's like, "Look how spry he is! He's so quick and mobile and agile." It's like I don't know if he needs to lose weight. I'm not saying that. He was like 24 at the time, and now he's 30. You know, I don't think Joel Embiid at this stage in his career is like out of shape, but I do wonder. Like, I don't think he can do the Tim Duncan thing where he just gets more and more slender because I think his knee can't handle that sort of stuff. I don't know. He did not look that great over the summer on the Olympic team. Had some big moments, especially going into Jokic, great game, and against Serbia in that same one.
You look
But
up
like
and he's got 30 points, you know?
but he wasn't moving well.
Yep. Against the Knicks,
And
he wasn't moving well.
no, and at the beginning of last season, he was moving great. And I mean, he was embarking on arguably the best scoring season in the history of the league. I mean, he was putting up 36 with like
And then it didn't last.
basically the best scoring season ever if we don't contextualize for the league, just by the raw numbers of like
Sure.
65% true shooting percentage, 36 a game. Like that's insane.
Yep.
But you know, he did not move the same, and he hasn't played in the preseason. I don't think he's going to.
I bring this up because news dropped this weekend that he's going to sit out the rest of preseason just to keep himself fresh. And I'm like, man, let's just like really appreciate what this Hall of Famer gives us moving forward. Because of course, on paper, man, this team could win a championship. I love the Paul George edition. I love them re-signing Embiid to a contract that'll take him by his whole career to the end of his career. And Maxey is awesome. And I love McCain quite a bit. He already looks good. But like real talk, like, man, just like a few dominant runs for Embiid, I'll be happy. He's given us a lot as a fan, as a fan. I feel appreciative of him. I don't expect that much of him anymore. He looks a little broken.
Yeah, I did not like how he was moving. Obviously, in the next series, but that was questionable because he was coming back from that knee injury. But playing in the Olympics, I'm not going to say, "Hey, dude, you should have gotten some rest instead of going and getting that gold medal." You know, you want to do it. You have your opportunity. It's your career, your life, your health. Cool. Maybe it would have been better for the Sixers if he just, drank like a couple, virgin Shirley Temples. I guess is a Shirley Temple always virgin?
Yeah. Oh, it's
Okay,
like
that was his drink though. It was like Shirley
yeah.
Temples, right? That was his thing. If he just had a couple Shirley Temples, chilled, stayed off his knee, maybe that would have been better than him out there scrapping against Serbia for a gold.
It's like when Jonathan Isaac came out and said, like, he put on like what 30 pounds of muscle. I thought of Apple. I was like, our smallest screen ever, so compact. And next time it's like our biggest screen ever. You've never seen something so wide. It's like, what's the new improvement after that? It's like the smallest screen ever. It's just like vacillating up and down. I think Mitch Robinson got hurt because he was too big. I think Joel Embiid got hurt because he was too big. And Jonathan Isaac, however much I like him as a basketball player, hate him as a basketball player, love him for his politics. But
I love him for his ideas. As a player, he's just disappointed me with injuries.
yeah. Read his book.
What's his
Go read a book. Oh, Jonathan Isaac's autobiography. Cool.
what's his sneaker brand? Didn't he make his own?
Yeah, I think so. I forget. He is so good. I love him, man. As a prospect, holy cow.
I mean, also it's wild that he's been in the league for like 9 years or something at this point. Probably like 5, right? 7.
Yeah. Oh, easily. He already signed an extension, I believe. He
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he's awesome. I'm a huge
Yeah.
fan
as a
of his
prospect.
politics.
Yeah. I hate his scouting report. I love his politics.
You know what else I love, Andrew?
The perfect food.
Perfect Pods.
Cookies. All right, sorry. Yeah.
All right,
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.